Now, just a few things before we start. I'd like to have quite interactive. So if you want to speak, you'll see on your screen there's an area that you can, the little hand there, and you can put onto that. If you've got audio, I'll be able to have an actual conversation with you, or otherwise you can just put the hand up and have a chat online. So I suppose really the reason why we're doing this is that one of the areas that we have the greatest concerns in businesses around is around the fear of people giving feedback. And a lot of the issues that we have around having to deal with conflict or those difficult conversations, all of these things could be eliminated if we had, if we're, everybody was able to give their team members feedback. So let's get the show on the road. So what we're going to do today is by the end of the webinar, we're going to hopefully, you'll be able to identify the common personal barriers to giving effective feedback. You'll be able to recognise the benefits of addressing minor issues before they become more serious. Proactively manage feedback, set up your team for success, and learn an effective model for feedback. And I always call this the Di Pearce famous model for feedback, never fails. So if you can work with this one, you'll be very successful in giving feedback. Are there any questions so far? No? Right. So what actually holds you back from giving feedback? Would anybody like to participate into this? You can either do it verbally or online. We've got any volunteers? No. You're all shy on a Monday. So from my experience, oh, here we go. So Chloe has said that she's worried that she might cause offence and ruin relationships. Yep, and that is something that everybody gets concerned about, and particularly if you have been working with a team and then become the manager, it is an area that a lot of people get concerned about. The thing is that if you have if you can set the feedback up in the appropriate manner, it won't cause issues. And that fear of giving, Nadine said, she's got a fear of giving negative feedback because it might be misunderstood. Yeah, it's really interesting how people always, what I say, go to the dark side. And whenever you give people feedback, they become quite defensive. Again, yep, it's another issue. Anybody else got any more issues? No trust. So Sue, is that no trust? Is that they trust you? We're going to get a response there. No. There we go. So yeah, not having that trust. Yeah, don't trust the organisation or each other. Yeah, look, that's a really valid point. So a lot of people don't trust other people. You say something to someone and then you talk about things confidentially and then they all go and blab. Yeah, I can understand that, Sue. I can see Sue's trying to type here, sorry. So yeah, that whole trust area, that fear of causing someone to get upset or to ruin relationships are very valid reasons why people hold back from giving feedback. The other reason is that people currently have a fear that if they give someone some constructive feedback, that they will end up by getting into fair work, or someone might throw a bullying and harassment case on them. And some workplaces that does happen. However, it's part of the responsibility of a leader that the moment you have a new person coming into the team, or you have just walked into your new team, you need to be consistently giving feedback and praise. And just getting everybody into the habit of feedback being a really healthy communication model that we have in workplaces. So the consequences of not giving feedback, and I always say, if you're not giving your people feedback, you're actually setting them up for failure. And what happens is that you get a poor culture, and I think this is something that a lot of organisations suffer from, that culture of, well, it's negative around feedback, and people got this, someone's picking on you or bullying you or harassing you or whatever, and so the feedback just doesn't happen. People also get a low self-esteem. Like if you don't give people feedback, how can they be made to feel more positive or motivated about their job if you're not giving them feedback? And again, that goes into creating a poor culture. You also get mediocre performance when you don't give feedback. How do people know when to increase their level of performance? How do people know that they're doing a great job or they're not doing a great job? It is also, you create a environment of disrespect, and that's really, it's disrespect against you. If you as a leader aren't giving people feedback, other people in your team become disrespectful, or they disrespect you, sorry, as your leader. They expect you to stand up and give people feedback, both praise and constructive feedback. We also find that there's a higher staff turnover when people aren't being given feedback. People want to know that they're doing a good job or where they can improve. And the other area is that we find is that there is an increased level of conflict within teams when people aren't given feedback. So it means that other people take on the responsibility to give their colleagues feedback when it shouldn't be, and then that then in turn transfers into conflict. Has anybody else got any other consequences of not giving feedback that you'd like to share with the group? Nothing there? Sue's typing. I'm waiting for you, Sue. We've got a few coming through. We'll just grab these. All right. So basically, by not setting people up and giving them feedback, you're setting them up for failure. Yeah, Chloe, it really does devalue that whole relationship between you, your organisation, and the team. And Chloe's put here, the lack of direction for future KPIs. Yeah, that's why we just have mediocre performance. How do people know that they're doing well and how well they could do and what their contribution is to the team if they're not being given consistent feedback? So let's move on. So let's look at the benefits of giving feedback. Setting your people up for success means that you give them feedback. And when we give feedback to individuals and team, the team actually works together to achieve their individual goals and their work goals, and they work together to help each other and support each other. The individuals actually feel valued. They feel like they're a valued member of the team, that they are contributing, and that you actually value them and see opportunities where they can grow and develop. In turn, this will give you increased productivity. And I think one of the really important areas is that it gives you a healthy culture of respect and empowered communication. People want to support each other, people respect each other, they respect you as a leader, and people empower each other when they communicate. one of the other benefits is that there is a decreased unplanned leave and turnover. I often find that when people aren't being given consistent feedback, we have a lot of those doona days, sick days, that when we have unplanned leave, that costs us as an organisation, and you get a higher level of turnover. I don't know if you know that at Google is known to be one of the most amazing companies in the whole wide world, and they have a really high staff retention, like they're sitting at 99%. Now, we all know that they have the most fabulous office, and you can ride bikes and swing on swings and go down slides and do all those amazing things. But what they do that makes them stand out as the difference is that feedback is embedded into their whole culture. Everybody is given feedback from a one-on-one perspective every week. They have weekly meetings for a whole team. They have the individual feedback. All the managers need to do 360-degree feedback sessions twice a year, and this has made a huge difference to the progress of the company and the progress of the individuals through giving feedback. In saying that, there's also one of the other benefits of giving consistent feedback is that you do have that reduced conflict, and you as managers can then spend more time developing the skills of individuals and of your team. Can anybody share any other areas where they believe that giving feedback is a benefit to the organisation or to your team? No. Okay, we've got one coming in. Yeah, thanks, Sue. Yeah, that higher level of employee engagement, higher level of personal responsibility. We want people in our teams to be responsible and personally responsible and accountability. And having that whole engagement and that really healthy culture is makes such a difference to a team. And Nadine, thank you, makes people aware of any areas they have overlooked to enable them to improve. Yeah, it's about jumping in and addressing these small areas, and it's nipping things in the bud before they get out of control, and so people can improve. Let's look at the next one. So when and where should you give feedback? When is the right time? The right time is now. The moment you see, you observe, you hear, you get the results in anything, and you see that a person is not performing at the right level, or their behaviour is not appropriate according to particularly your code of conduct, that is the time that you need to give the people feedback. Where do you give feedback? Well, I always think to try the first time you give a person feedback around an issue that you have just observed, make it casual, informal, relaxed, so then they feel comfortable about receiving the feedback. So I would just sort of call them aside, maybe just pop into an office where it's open, or just call them into your office, but don't close the door and make it all secret squirrel. Make it open and casual and have a quiet conversation with them. And then just have that feedback and then follow it up with an email. Nadine has made a comment about it's best to have a second party present when doing this to avoid negative feedback and harassment. Yeah, this is a really interesting one, Nadine. When you're giving informal feedback, you should have a relationship where you can just give the feedback. Sometimes if you have the second person in on that meeting, other people could interpret that as being harassed or bullied as well. So when you give informal feedback, which is the first lot of feedback, that should really be between you and that individual. But do it in a way that it's not confronting, and I'm going to give you a tool for doing that in just a moment. And then when you get down to the formal stages, then definitely you would need to have a second person into the meeting. So do it as often as you can, consistently as you can. If you have trouble with giving feedback and you need time to plan it, I'd say overnight, and then make sure you give feedback the next day. I'm going to talk now about how people react to feedback. This is above the line and below the line. Now, if you go onto YouTube, you can actually see the video of this. It's called the Conscious Leadership, above the line or below the line. But what they say is that we as human beings, whenever we are given some feedback or we go into a situation about being given feedback, we are actually, our brain is trained to go below the line. So it's where we feel that we almost go into that fight or flight mode. We feel nervous, we feel anxious, we feel out of control, we get very defensive and closed. And our brain is programmed to do that. However, what happens is our neocortex kicks in 4 to 6 seconds later, and we then go above the line and we can be more open and receptive to being given feedback. Has anybody experienced that, where you've been given feedback or about to be given feedback and all these negative things are going through your mind, and then you become positive? Yes, so you can understand that and feel it. And it's such a, if you go and play this video, it'll just really resonate with you. And actually what I recommend you do is that you play that to your team, so they also understand, yep, it's always my fault, love it, Sue. So go and download that on YouTube and play it with your team. But when you actually hear the dialogue of it, it's amazing. Any further comments before I go into the model? No? Right. Here is the feedback model I'm going to take you through. And it falls into 3 areas. First of all, there's the basic principles. The basic principles of giving feedback. Then we have giving feedback and then receiving feedback. Again, my recommendation is that you train your staff on this model and explain to them, this is how I'm going to be giving you feedback from now on, and this is how I'd like you to receive it. So let's go into the model. So let's look at the basic principles. First of all, we need to focus on the situation, the issue or behaviour, not the person. And I know sometimes that this can be really, really challenging, because often people who need feedback tend to grate on your nerves sometimes after a while, and it's really hard to be really professional about it. And I always use a story that many years ago I was working in a business and we had a staff member who had the most awful voice, and it was like nails going down a chalkboard. And whenever I looked at her or heard her, I wanted to do things that probably weren't legal. And I also then wanted to attack her and try and get rid of her because of this whole demeanour. The other thing is that she wasn't performing as well. So I'm sure that you've all had that picture or had that person in your working world before. And it was really interesting that I knew that I had to be really professional with her. I actually had to focus on the situation and not her as a person. And when I left that organisation 3 years later, she came up to me and said to me how dreadfully sad she was that I was leaving, because she felt that I was the only person that she had really connected with. And I thought, wow, well, that model really, really worked. So that's the key. Focus on the issue, the situation, not person. Then you need to maintain the confidence and the self-esteem of others. Giving people feedback is not about putting them down. It's there to make them feel better about themselves and show them they have the capability of improving and that you have the belief in them. We also need to maintain constructive relationships. This is about building our relationship with this person, not destructing it. So think about how can we be building this relationship. The next one is to take the initiative to make things better. You also need to look at different ways that you can be accommodating, ways that you can make things better for this person, and also lead by example. You know, the classic is if you have someone who's consistently coming in late and you need to give them feedback for being late, then make sure that you're not being late yourself. Are there any questions around the basic principles of giving feedback? No? Right, we'll move on. So this is how we deliver constructive feedback. Also, can you please remember that it is constructive feedback? It is not constructive criticism. There's nothing good about criticism. So make sure you use the word feedback instead of criticism. First of all, so you can see on the screen here, I have got convey your positive intent and use 8 to 10 words only. So this is when you look at the situation, go, what is it that I'm wanting to improve? And I think this is the bit that, you know, starting off and giving someone some feedback and having that opening sentence or phrase is the hardest bit. So let's look at this and see what it looks like in real terms. So for instance, if you had someone who was consistently coming in late on a Wednesday by half an hour, say. So your positive intent would be, and I'm going to use the name Sarah, and say, Sarah, you know, want to talk to you about improving productivity, or it could be about, I want to talk to you about improving staff morale, or it could be about, I want to talk to you about improving adherence to the code of conduct or contract or something like that. So whatever it is that you're wanting them to improve. Then the next step is to describe specifically what you have observed. Again, 8 to 10 words. So what I've observed is that every Wednesday you are coming to work 30 minutes late. Nothing more, nothing less. The next bit is to state the impact of that behaviour, again in 8 to 10 words. So the impact of that, it is putting undue pressure on Mary Jane to get her job completed. Or it might be that you're not adhering to your position description or to your contract. It could have something to do with, you know, you're not adhering to the hours of work, you're putting pressure on other people, whatever it is, and you can make that quite firm. And it's this bit that gets them to see exactly what it is that, or the impact that it's having on the business. So my advice for this is these 3 sentences: convey your positive intent, describe specifically what you've observed, and state the impact, comes out in one go. Just 8 to 10 words, so write them down before you have your conversation, clearly, succinctly, and don't have an area or too many spaces in there for people to stop and interfere or intervene in the conversation. Once you have then finished, you can then focus, you can then ask the person to respond. So can you tell me more about this? And this is where you can have that discussion. Once you've found out the reasons why they're coming late to work and what's been going on, you can then look at a strategy. How are we going to fix this? So are we going to have flexible hours for this person on a Wednesday because they actually now have to drop a child at school? What is happening there? Or do we simply have to buy them an alarm clock? So whatever it is that we have to give that person some feedback on, or whatever the outcome is, we need to discuss that and have agreement with that person. So that's the main model. Would anybody like to make comments about it? Does anybody have an example that you'd like for me to work through a conversation around? I've just got a couple of responses coming up. So Sue said, would you then set a future date for review? Absolutely. So my process, or the process that I like to run, is that you give the person some feedback around what it is and come up with strategy. Then I would actually then send them an email, because this is where you'll get something in writing. Just say, hey Sarah, great catching up with you today. So we're both on the right track or on the same page. You'll be starting on Wednesdays at 9:30 and finishing at 6, or whatever agreement that you have taken place. So with that email, it's all, once you've actually sent that email, that's a copy of it. So that's all you need to keep. Lisa's asked if there's multiple issues. This is always I would do each one separately. So I would go through the whole feedback model, convey your positive intent, everything for one issue, and come up with a strategy. Then I would go into the second issue. So I wouldn't put a whole lot of issues together with one piece of feedback. I would do 3 separate pieces of feedback for every issue. You can do it in the same session if you like, but let's deal with every situation separately. So Nadine, you've got a situation where staff member is taking out of school about the business to clients who have brought them to my attention. I haven't seen it as much, but I've only been advised numerous times. Yeah, look, it's really interesting when you're working on hearsay. It's really difficult to give feedback. But again, maybe you'd be okay to say, hey, listen, I just want to get some really clear communication going, or improve our communication, or make sure that we're all working towards the right goals or something. I have heard that this has happened, and I want to set you up for success. Maybe it would be a better way to go with it. So now I'm thinking about it more, Nadine. Say, look, I really want to set you up for success. What I've heard is that you've been talking out of school about business clients, and the impact of that is a breach of confidentiality, or it's unprofessional. And I just want to make sure that you don't do that in the future. Okay, Sue has come up. When do you suggest to give feedback? Like I've heard it's been said, and the person asks you by who. Well, look, the thing is that this is always a tricky one. And again, it's about, hey, I want to set you up for success. And I want to have an informal conversation. I think that's always important to say. I've heard things, and I just want to make sure that we're all working together on the same page. I don't want you to fail in anything, so this is what I've heard. And always, you can always use the scenario of, where there's smoke, there's fire, and I just want to make sure that we can nip things in the bud. You can always use the words informal conversation. You're not accusing someone, you've heard something, or someone has said something. So we just want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. But if they ask who said it, just say, look, I mean, that's difficult. I know that's difficult. So, but you can just say, look, that it's not about who said what. It's about what the perceptions are and what people are hearing. If one person has heard something, then other people could be doing it. So I would just say, look, at this point, this is just an informal conversation. I just want to make sure that you've been set up for success. And, obviously someone cares enough about you or values enough to say something. Any other comments? It's always a tricky one. The more you can give people feedback, the more consistently you give feedback, people become really open about it and they don't become what I call ugly and defensive. They take that on board and they're more open to it. The other thing is, make sure that you give equal enough amount of praise for people as well. So let's just move on to the end bit about receiving feedback. And this is the bit that I think is really important for you to train your people on, and for when you give them feedback. So say to them, okay, this is how I'm going to be giving you feedback from now on. These are the basic principles around it, and this is the way I'm going to give you feedback. Now, more importantly, this is the way I'd like you to receive the feedback. So first of all, I want you to actually focus on the content, not on me. I'm giving you feedback because I'm setting you up for success, and I want you to listen to the content. I don't want you to go below the line and focus on me as a person. I also want you to sit calmly and listen and be attentive to the first 3 lines of the conversation. Then I want you to clarify the feedback. So, because what happens is that when I give someone feedback, what goes out of my mouth and goes into the ears can sometimes get lost and discombobulated in cyberspace, I call it. And what you say and what they hear is completely different. So get them to clarify. So what you're saying is that I'm putting a lot of undue pressure on my team members by coming to work late, 30 minutes late on a Wednesday. Yes, it is. The other thing we want people to do is acknowledge the concerns, acknowledge the other person's concern. We don't, and to stop over defending and over explaining. You know what? We're giving you feedback. We want you just to go accept it and we will discuss it. But don't go blaming other people. Don't go getting all defensive. We're giving you feedback because it might be something that we've heard or something we've observed, or someone might have highlighted something to us that we want to set you up for success. So just acknowledge the feedback and then we will discuss it. We will discuss the pros and cons around it and we will come up together with suggestions. The key area around this is for them to sit and listen until you have stopped, and basically till we go back here and ask that person to respond. So they are the basic fundamentals, or the basic model of giving feedback. Are there any comments or suggestions or anything? Oh, so it's funny, you can't really defend it because, as you said, it's another person's perception, so therefore it's real to someone. Absolutely so. And I think even having that conversation with people, people's perceptions, One of the areas that we have so much trouble in workplaces is that, particularly around the bullying and harassment and things like that, it's that people's perception of things. So we've got to have these discussions about people's perceptions, because if someone is perceiving something or feeling something, someone else could be. And you are giving this person an opportunity to change or do something around it so it doesn't turn into something really, really negative. So let's look at feedback as being a very positive process in a workplace. Yeah, Lisa has asked if it's person's getting very heated, and do you pause? Look, it really depends on the situation. First of all, you've always got to keep yourself safe. From my experience, if you do give them the feedback using the model, they don't get too angry and defensive. But if it's a case, if they do get angry, they get really, really defensive, you're not going anywhere, or they are in, streams of tears, then maybe stop it and say, okay, why don't we just, we'll resume this, go out and have a break, and let's come back in half an hour and just resume the conversation. So Nadine has also asked, how do you stop someone constantly feeling attacked from the feedback? Again, Nadine, it's around training people as to the reason why you're giving them feedback. You're giving them feedback because you value them enough to give them feedback to improve. And, it'll be going back into the workplace now and actually training your people on how you're going to be giving them feedback and the reasons why you're giving them feedback. Say it, if I don't give you feedback, I'm not setting you up for success. I'm not valuing you. So that's the reason why I'm giving you feedback. You will always, in saying that, there will always be a small percentage of people who will become angry, will become very defensive, will feel like they've been attacked. But research shows that about 94% of people who are given feedback will want to improve and will be grateful of it. But remember, they will first of all go below the line. We all go below the line. We've just got to come back up again. Any other comments? No comments? We'll be able to send you out a copy of this model. And what I recommend you do is, when you need to give someone some feedback, go through the steps. Write it down. What have you actually write it down, and do the same for the impact. Look at what you've written and take out all of those vacant words that we don't need. Keep it as close to 10 words per line. Practice, ring a mate, have the conversation and say, how does this sound? And get them to be, they can play tough with you and say, oh, that was a bit harsh, or no, that's a bit too soft, or whatever. And have a couple of practice runs before you actually go in and you give the feedback. But as I say, from my experience in the past, it's been a really effective way of giving feedback. And for those of you who have children, and particularly teenage children, I can tell you it works 100%. Are there any other comments before we close for today? No? All right. Well, thanks so much for coming into the webinar. Next month, we're going to be doing a webinar on setting your people up for success right from the start, around the orientation, induction and onboarding. And again, we will also be referring back to this model. So for all of the units that we're going to be delivering in these webinars, we will be flicking back to that feedback model. You will know it off by heart by the end of it. So next month, we'll send you out some information about the next one, which is going to be on induction, orientation, and onboarding. So thank you all very much for your time today, and have a wonderful week, giving lots and lots of feedback. Thank you.